The NFL Combine is a week away. And just when you thought you might have a good idea on what the 49ers like in the NFL draft, Matt Barrows has a column in The Athletic that perfectly lays out position by position exactly what Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch are looking for. We'll talk about it on today's Gold Standard podcast, brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino. What is good, everybody? Welcome to the original Gold Standard podcast. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. He's Levin Black. Levin, it's Wednesday. The Combine starts next week. The offseason is kicking into high gear.
Yeah, we actually get to the point next week where we start to actually know what's going to happen in the NFL draft or have an idea of where people are going to go. Because for better or worse, the Combine changes a lot.
We know there will be risers, there will be fallers, there will be movement and rumors and discussions and all that stuff. I can't wait. I love it. I think we're going to hear some stuff about Deebo Samuel once we get to the Combine. We'll hear stuff about Myles Garrett and Max Crosby and all of that stuff. But first and foremost, the Combine, of course, is about the draft and the incoming rookies. And I was, trolling around the internet this morning, and I happened to see a column in The Athletic that I think is freaking incredible. And it's by Matt Barrows, who is my favorite 49ers beat writer. And it's all about profiles of what the Niners look for in the draft. And it actually goes position by position, and it names what the Niners like and why. And it gives you some players from this year's draft class that fit the mold of what the 49ers like. I read it. I immediately texted you about it. This is yeoman's work from Matt Barrows.
It's a lot of info. It is a very long article. There are some names there that I've heard others throw out there, one of which you have on the screen right now. Kobe Bryant is somebody that I've seen multiple content creators throw out there over the last year or so for cornerback, somebody in probably day 3, maybe it gets up to day 2. But I will say this article is based on what the 49ers have done in the past. And I do think that it is time to reassess certain things. And I do think that the roster is weak in certain spots because of their preference on some of these positions. And I think they recognize, at least for sure, one of them has become a weakness and they need to change their mindset.
Yeah, let's talk about that first, kind of generally, and then we can go and go through the positions and look at those. Because clearly there are specific things that every team looks for in a position: quarterback, running back, offensive line, whether it's arm length, whether it's production, whatever it is, they all have their criteria, right? The question with the 49ers, I think, for me is, are they passing up players that they know will be good players simply because they don't fit that criteria? I don't know the answer to that question, Levin. Do you think that's what they're doing?
I think at certain positions, it's absolutely what they're doing. I think every single team does that at certain positions. I think some coaches and GMs do that more than others. Some it's very limited, but like for sure a quarterback, I would say every single team in the NFL does that. This guy's good at this thing, but we don't care for that. Like we need somebody that can do this. I think it really gets down to, do you have certain, I won't say superstitions, but do you have certain things that you take as gospel that aren't really gospel? Like you mentioned hand size. Hand size is a pretty big deal for quarterbacks. It's not a deal breaker though. That's the part I want to get at. Like arm length is a very big deal for offensive tackles. I would argue it's not necessarily a deal breaker though. Like evaluate somebody for their film and what you think they can do. And then I think you use the measurables like that as kind of a way to sort the players that you think are relatively equal. Oh, this guy, we kind of rate both of these guys as second rounders. This guy has very short arms. And look, offensive tackles, the history in the NFL is if you have short arms, you struggle because you can't get your arms on somebody before they get arms on you. That's why it's a big deal for our offensive tackles. So you can use that as kind of like a tiebreaker. I have a problem when you take it as gospel and you say, nope, deal breaker, that guy's measurables don't match.
It's a hard thing to balance because I get having things that are deal breakers for you. You have to whittle these prospects down in some form or fashion. So I understand that. But also, I do think there are times when you have to recognize, like, hey, yes, he doesn't have this one thing that's a deal breaker, but everything else is so extraordinary that that compensates for it. We make an exception. And it's a hard thing to do because if you constantly do that, then you end up with a whole team of exceptions, which is, of course, not what you want either. So it is a very difficult balance to strike with those two things. And the 49ers have to do it. Let's get into some of the positional stuff, and we can talk about some of the things you like, some of the things you think need to change. First up is quarterback. I don't want to spend too much time on this because the 49ers are not going to be drafting a starting quarterback. Obviously, they're content with Brock Purdy, but it does say Shanahan would never turn down a tall, tough, quick processing quarterback with a cannon for an arm who's also capable of gouging defenses for 100 rushing yards on any given day. But if he had to choose one of those attributes, he'd probably go with the processing speed. Shanahan wants a quarterback who sees the field like he does. I completely agree. I think that's exactly what Kyle Shanahan looks for in a quarterback. I do think that, if that's the only thing that matters to you, I think you're not, you're seeing the forest through the trees, so to speak. But I agree that Barrows hits the nail right on the head with the Niners.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that that's what Kyle Shanahan prefers. He's all but said it. I don't think he's ever been asked directly that question, but he has said many times that, he prefers the cerebral type of quarterback over the crazy athletic. He's not that big on off schedule. It's one of those things that he believes that if you stick to the schedule, then the play calling's so good, you'll be great. You don't need to do the off schedule stuff.
I think that he doesn't value the off schedule and stuff enough. I think that I think that the processing is so important to him, and the off schedule stuff is very much like a side dish. And I think that he doesn't value it enough, frankly. In today's NFL, I think it's not just a nice to have. It's a gotta have. Like, you have to be able to do it. And I think that what you have to be able to do in that area for a quarterback is growing. More and more, it becomes more vital for what you have to do. It's not just, well, can he evade one blocker and run? It's like, no, you got to actually be a threat. You got to actually be able to overcome coaching and overcome mistakes by other players. And luckily for the 49ers, I think Brock Purdy can, but I think that's more of a happy accident that happened to them than something they chose by design.
Yeah, I mean, Shanahan has literally said that he's not that big on off schedule stuff because he believes that if it's a play that's not working, fine, we'll can that play and we'll live on the next down and we'll get the first down on the next down. He doesn't like the off schedule. And to me, that comes down to trust issues. He doesn't trust other quarterbacks. He doesn't trust quarterbacks to make the right call on the off schedule stuff because the off schedule stuff is, well, it's not what I called. And I think that's the ultimate overall problem that I have with Shanahan. He has trust issues and he has a very, very hard time giving trust quickly when you need to in the NFL because players come and go. And then at the same time, he has a hard time once he trusts you saying you're not that guy anymore. I need to move on from you. That to me is 100% the Shanahan issue. It revolves around trust.
And I think he doesn't trust that. He looks at those plays as not sustainable, right? Like, oh, great, you broke a tackle and you ran 20 yards and you got a first down. That's not sustainable. Even though, you may have missed the guy that was open for a 5-yard gain. And he thinks it's not sustainable, which I get that he's not wrong, but also like, it doesn't have to be sustainable, right? Like, for instance, if the 49ers made one stop on fourth down in the Super Bowl in 2023, they would be the world champions. It doesn't matter if Nick Bosa, blew his assignment and made the wrong read and happened to just trip up Patrick Mahomes on fourth down. Like, so what if it's not sustainable? Sometimes you only got to do things once, and I think that that's why I think that Kyle undervalues those type of things. I'm not sure that really made sense or I expressed accurately what I wanted to say, but
I'll say this. In the NFL, if you want an example of how important off schedule is, other than Tom Brady, name me a quarterback that has won a Super Bowl in recent history that did not thrive in off schedule. You got Jalen Hurts, you got Patrick Mahomes. Like, the NFL is all about the off schedule because they are game changing. It's almost like a turnover. Oh, instead of a 8-yard loss of a sack where it destroys the drive, we now have a 25-yard gain because the quarterback got outside a pocket and hit somebody deep.
Right. By the way, if you can't see the article because it's behind a paywall, the perfect fit, according to Barrows, for the Niners at quarterback was Dylan Gabriel out of Oregon in the 7th round. I hope we don't get into this habit of just projecting a quarterback to the 49ers in the 7th round all the time just because they happen to do it with Brock Purdy. But that is a name for you to watch once we actually get to April's draft. All right, next up, running back, according to Matt Barrows. Shanahan and his longtime running back guru, Bobby Turner, have taken all sorts of running backs since arriving. One trait they seek is the ability to plant a foot in the ground, change direction, and quickly accelerate to top speed. It's why the 49ers brought in Joe Williams and Matt Breida in 2017, went after Jerick McKinnon in 2018, and took Isaac Guerrero in the 4th round last year. They had the speed to excel on the stretch zone runs that are a crucial part of San Francisco's offense. I just feel like, yeah, that's cool, but you should be able to just draft a good running back. Like, to me, I don't think you need to we need to get this kind of guy. Like, just draft a really good running back and then change your running game to fit that guy. That's my opinion.
Give me the guy that has great vision. Rather than quarterback where Kyle prefers cerebral, which, yes, there is an aspect to that. Give me the running back that has the cerebral part of it, is capable of recognizing things just a split second sooner, because that's all the difference in the world. There are plenty of running backs that are succeeding in the NFL that are not athletically great. You could argue they're in the bottom half of athleticism in the NFL. Like, it's not about that. It's about ball carrier vision. And I always fall back to, it was an interview during his prime that I saw Marshall Faulk talk about. Like, they were asking him what makes him so great in the open field. And he said that the moment he gets the ball, he can see the play happen. He knows what's going to happen. He said he can't explain how, but he can see his vision was, he had the ability to recognize the way they were leaning, the way they were moving, the momentum, and know they're going to be limited to get to this spot. They can't get to that spot before I can get to that spot. So I'm going to change direction and go there. And that's what you need in a running back. Obviously, Marshall Faulk was special in that, but you need people that have, I would say, an innate ability to recognize those without fully processing it. It is something that I think certain people have and certain people just don't have. And I don't think it's something that you can overall train. I think you can get slightly better at it with time if you get a bunch of carries. But in the end, it's just something that you have to have. And that's what I value as a running back. Give me the guy that is capable of recognizing people's angles and pursuits a split second sooner than the next guy. I don't care that you can run a 4.3 instead of a 4.35.
I remember that interview with Marshall Faulk because my favorite part of it was when he said, when I'm running, I don't look at the guy closest to me because I know I'm going to make that guy miss. I'm looking at the other guy after that. And that was just like a FU moment because Marshall Faulk was so damn good. I think the Niners look at running backs the way they look at offensive linemen. Unless there's an incredible freak special guy in round one, like, a Hall of Fame, the Christian McCaffrey type guy, we'll find a guy that'll fit our system later.
Yeah, and they don't, let's be honest, like Barrows has somebody drafted 3rd round here, or listed that's 3rd round projection. No need. If they take a running back before the 5th round, I'm going to be annoyed. There is no need. There's plenty of running backs on this roster. One guy that I do think fits the mold, and I would like to see as a potential kind of give versatility, I do think he's a little bit wrong in what he said there. Like, he said they went after Jerick McKinnon because he fits the mold of one cut. No, they went after Jerick McKinnon because of his versatility, because of his receiving threat. That's what they truly, I think when you get Kyle Shanahan, he wants somebody that, yes, is a one-cut runner, but is a dual threat. And there was a guy by the name of Marcus Yarns. He comes from a small school, but he did get a combine invite. So we're going to find out some stuff from him. He comes from Delaware. He's way down on the list. He's going to be somebody that's probably 4th, 5th, 6th round drafted, but he's very quick. And in his college career, he had 64 receptions and over 800 yards because he's capable of running wide receiver routes. So it's not just dump offs. A lot of times running backs coming out, especially out of college, where the running back passing is not nearly as developed as the NFL. That's one of the big differences between college and the NFL, is that in the NFL, running backs catch a lot more than in college football. But usually a college football running back even if they're a good receiver, comes out and they might have like 50 receptions for 300 yards because they're just getting dump offs. They don't develop these. This is a guy that had over 800 yards on 64 receptions. He is a established good route runner out of the backfield, and I think that's the guy that fits the mold. He has quickness and he can catch passes. That's the mold.
That's the Delaware Blue Hen I want on the roster in 2025. It's not Joe Flacco. Give me Marcus Yarn, baby. I think that I agree with you. The receiving aspect, when this offense really sings, it's when they have a running back that can contribute both on the ground and as a receiver. Like Christian McCaffrey is what the 49ers were hoping to get with Jet McKinnon, except like on steroids. Like, the perfect example of what they want. And I agree with you. And, what do we always hear with Jordan Mason, right? Oh, part of the reason he couldn't play was because he needed to work on his receiving. Like, that is something that they value a lot, and I would agree. And I think that you're right. Barrows didn't really mention that part of it, and I think he sort of overlooked that because I would agree with you.
Kyle doesn't like to tip his hand, so he doesn't want a running back that running back's in, they're most likely running. He doesn't like that. He wants a running back that can play all downs to where even on first down, you go, well, this guy might be coming out of the backfield on a pass catching route. We need to pay attention to that. And because what that does is it forces linebackers to hesitate for a split second. They got to stay wide for a split second to see if that running back is coming out on a passing route, things like that. So I think that is the number one quality that Kyle Shanahan wants in a running back, somebody that makes the defense hesitate because of their pass catching ability.
It goes back to the whole positionless football thing that we know he likes. And we know that it's easier for him to break your rules as a defense if he has guys that are versatile that can do a bunch of things. Because he can set you up formationally and then just beat you over the head with some of the guys in certain positions that can do special things. Kenny on YouTube says Yarn catches the ball well and has good speed in the second level. Not sure why he stayed at Delaware. He stayed at Delaware so the 49ers could pick him later in the draft. That's my theory.
I'm not sure why anybody stays in the Northeast.
Well, it's 14 degrees here today where I am. So
that's right around what I am. Not fun.
I am at that sentiment, right? This is the point in February where I'm just like, my God, I can't wait for it to be warm again. This is insufferable. My whole yard is all ice and stuff. Anyway, we don't need to get into that. Let's continue the positional preview breakdown, shall we? Let's go to wide receiver now. It says this is the only spot where we'll have two candidates because Shanahan likes two distinct types of receivers. One is a player who's part running back, someone who's technically a wideout but is very strong with the ball in his hands. The second type is someone with excellent separation skills. Shanahan watches wideouts, lower bodies, and how smoothly and forcefully they make cuts and create space with defenders. It's what Shanahan liked about Dante Pettis, Brandon Ayuk, and Ricky Pearsall. This is the one I had the biggest issue with, Levin. It's one thing to have a player like Deebo Samuel and then say, oh, he's versatile, he can do a bunch of things. It's another thing to say we have to have that guy as a wide receiver. Like, to me, just get a bunch of guys that can separate and you'll be fine. If you happen to get one that can also do the Deebo stuff, great, but that should be the nice to have, not the gotta have, in my opinion.
We got a bit of breaking news. Do you got the soundbite queued up for breaking news? There are tweets coming out from established NFL reporters that the NFL has informed teams that the salary cap will fall between 277.5 and 281, which is considerably more than expected. I think 272 was the projection that people had. So you're getting an extra $5 to $8 million of cap space for every single team.
Yeah. I see the tweet here. Dan Graziano has the one of the tweets. I know other people are tweeting it out as well. Hooray. The cap will have increased by more than $53 million over the last 2 years. This is good news for everybody. Great.
It's great news for free agents.
Hey, you know what, though? It makes a $30 million cap hit on Deebo Samuel a little bit easier to take, right? Just a little bit. Maybe now you pause a little bit. You're like, you know what? We've suddenly got more cap room. All of a sudden, maybe I do make that trade for a 4th round pick this year. Or, I don't know if it will, but it's not nothing.
No, it also makes it easier to do. I'll just throw it out there. Extend George Kittle in the same season that you extend Purdy. I do think that there's there's some things here that could happen that I don't think the Niners necessarily thought they would do. They could say, you know what, we got an extra 5-6 million. We're going to make sure we get, and it's their specific free agent that they want, and they say, we're going to talk to him. We're going to give him his offer and tell him, if you have more, talk to us before you agree to it.
Good. That's what you should do. Take advantage of it, man. And God knows there are certain moves the 49ers can make. God knows that there are certain players that would make this team a lot better. Go out, maximize it, take advantage. And I agree with you on the Kittle thing too, by the way. I think that's definitely going to happen. So like I said, the cap has increased by more than 53 million over the last 2 years. Last year's cap was 255.4 projected. What if it's 281? Let's just, aim high, right? Like, that is a huge increase year to year. That's $30 million. That's the Deebo hit right there.
Yeah, I think it went up close to that amount last year too. It's, if they make the obvious moves that I think they should make and will be making in terms of renegotiating certain big salaries into bonuses, and they move off of Deebo, they will have more than 90 million in cap space this year.
Right. Yeah.
I think that might make it possible that they say, you know what, we're not going to backload Purdy's thing quite as much as people think. We're going to have this be like, not necessarily front loaded, obviously, but maybe they make it a little more even across the year, so that what that does is make it a little easier to move off of in a year or two if they choose to.
Or it just makes it more of a discount, right? Because as the cap goes up and the quarterback contracts go up and you got your guy locked in, that makes it a little easier in the later years of the deal. All of a sudden it's like, hey, this deal looks pretty good because this quarterback's getting $75 million a year or whatever the case may be. But yeah, it's good news. It means more money in the hands of players. I'm all for that. So hooray, salary cap going up. Hooray, Niners getting more flexibility. Now let's see what they actually do with it. Thank you, by the way, because I would not have seen that, so I appreciate it.
Somebody put it in comments saying salary cap just went up, so I Googled it quick while you were talking. We can get back on topic, though, about the wide receivers. This is another one that I think he hits, but he doesn't quite hit it dead on in terms of what the Niners look for in a wide receiver. I feel like I know it's a long article, but I feel like he could have emphasized a little bit more here. I think what Kyle truly likes in a wide receiver is, one, blocking. You've got to have a willingness to block, and that's not mentioned. But I believe he values after the catch, which he mentions running back style. He's kind of getting at that because running backs are good in the open field. Obviously, that's what they specialize at, running with the ball in their hands. But he doesn't emphasize the yards after the catch, which is truly what I think Kyle looks at. And then he looks at people who can get open deep, not necessarily immediately. Like, he does not go for the guys that are like, oh, they get open in a split second. You know what I mean? He's not somebody that looks for somebody that is going to be great at the, slants and things like that. To me, he looks at the guys that are going to win their matchups given a couple seconds. Ayuk is somebody like that. Ayuk is not truly that good at super short routes. He excels when he gets a little bit of speed, and then when he makes his cuts, one, he's good at like leaning certain ways that make it hard to predict where he's cutting, and then his footwork is great. It's a lot easier to get your footwork when you got a little bit of space because you're running now instead of right off the line of scrimmage. So I feel like he missed a little bit here where, the Dante Pettis's, the Brandon Ayuk's, the Ricky Pearsall's, what is their calling card? Their calling card was footwork and getting open down the field.
If it were me drafting wide receivers, I would not want, one wide receiver that's good at, separating and another wide receiver that could do running back skills. I would want all my wide receivers to be able to do the same thing so that if you do have injuries, you don't have to completely scrap part of the game plan, right? Like, how many times did we have a situation where either Deebo got hurt during the game or he missed time, and all of a sudden it was like, well, half our game plan is gone because they're all Deebo players and nobody else can do that. Like, you have to account for injuries. So to me, I don't think that the 49ers should be looking for like different kinds of wide receivers. Just get the guys that can separate and get as many of those guys as you can. That's my philosophy. Clearly, I think the 49ers do it differently, but that's what I would do.
To me, it's all about footwork. Give me the guy who's a student of the game. Give me the guy who, even on college film, you can see, okay, he's clearly pretty advanced in his footwork already. Because you look at the top wide receivers in NFL history, it's littered with guys who are phenomenal at footwork. You look at, and they overcome limitations of physical traits. You know, the Jerry Rice obviously is the big example, but even like Antonio Brown, he was a low round pick because he didn't have the physical traits. He didn't run a super fast 40 or anything. Did it matter? No, because his footwork was so good. You look at a guy like right now, you got somebody like Devontae Adams. He excels because his footwork is so insane. He gets good releases off the line of scrimmage, and he's really hard to predict where he's going because his footwork is so precise. You're able to overcome a lack of speed through footwork because the footwork makes you faster than what you really are. Because when you make your cut, the cornerback's having to react that much later because they weren't able to predict where you were going. And your footwork is so crisp that you get out of that cut that split second faster than the guy that's sloppy. So that's what I want to see. I want to see the guys that are, I don't care how fast you run necessarily. I want to see the footwork. And I personally want somebody that has like kind of a physical mindset. I like the guys like Jennings that are not scared to go in there and fight. And if they have that mindset, guess what? They're going to learn to be a pretty decent blocker at the very least.
The perfect fit, according to Barrows, is Savion Williams out of TCU. He says he's not the most natural pass catcher in the draft, but he's got a big 6'5" frame and is powerful and violent with the ball in his hands. He's had 611 receiving yards and 6 receiving touchdowns and 322 rushing yards and 6 rushing touchdowns. See, but like this drives me nuts, Levin. You're drafting a wide receiver. If the first line in your scouting report is he's not the most natural pass catcher, I don't want him.
Yep.
Like, yep. I want guys that are good at the main thing that they're going to be asked to do. Okay. If you're drafting a wide receiver, I want him to be a natural receiver. I want him to be a good catcher of the football. Like that would scare me. He's not a natural pass catcher. Oh, okay. Well, then why are we taking him to play wide out?
Yeah. Look, this isn't a mistake by Barrows, right? This is Barrows saying this is the guy that fits what the 49ers history is. And he does fit the 49ers history. He is a Jalen Hurd clone, basically. Jalen Hurd is somebody that played running back at Tennessee and then transitioned to wide receiver at a different school. This is a guy that plays running back and wide receiver and is huge, just like Jalen Hurd. It is a Jalen Hurd style pick. Now, wide receiver is another position just like running back. I don't really care about it in this draft. They do not need to take a wide receiver. I'm okay for the right guy if they go third round at wide receiver, but personally, my preference is I don't want to see a wide receiver before the 5th. I want to see them sign a cheap veteran, as I've said in previous shows, cheap veteran to kind of give them the 4th/5th option, and then take a flyer on a guy late in the draft and see what you get. But Kyle Shanahan doesn't trust rookies anyway, so I don't want to see a high draft pick of a wide receiver. There's no need. They still, if you need a pass catcher when you have Ayuk, you have Jennings, you have Pearsall as your 3 wide receivers, then you got bigger problems, because when those are your top 3 wide receivers and you have Kittle as a tight end and you have Christian McCaffrey as a running back, pass catchers should not be something you draft in the top 3 rounds.
I agree, but I also think they are definitely taking one. I feel like they draft one every year. At some point, they will take one. Big Heck 49ers says, we don't need fit players. We need the best players. Barrows actually did name another wide receiver that was a perfect fit, Ricky White out of UNLV in the 6th round. He says White has some similarities to Kendrick Bourne in that he's not huge and not a speed demon, but he consistently gets open, especially downfield on deep crossers that are such a big part of the Niners system. Bonus, he was excellent on all 4 phases of special teams, which, yay, please bolster that. We didn't mention it just quickly. Demetrius Flanagan fouls, gone off the team. According to, I think it was either Mayoko or Barrows, it was a procedural thing because he went on IR with like a minor injury. As soon as he was cleared, they had to release him. So that's why they released him yesterday. Also, he was going to be a free agent in the new league year anyway, so no difference. But he played over 1,200 snaps on special teams. So the Niners do have, holes and snaps that they need to fill in that area.
Yeah, well, special teams, I don't care if every single person that played on special teams was back for next year. they have holes to fill on special teams. Because to me, they need a full redo on special teams. Like, I don't care who was one of the top special teams players. Nobody on special teams should be penciled in as, yeah, this guy's definitely going to be a contributor. I don't care. You guys were so bad. None of you should be safe. All of you should be on the cut list. Not that they get cut, but they should be going into training camp on, we don't know if this guy's making it. Like, the special teams going into training camp, here's our special teams, and it's a blank freaking roster.
Yeah,
I don't care.
There's no benefit of the doubt with special teams players that are currently on the roster, without question. Let's move on to tight end, because obviously that's a position that the 49ers have been searching for ever since drafting George Kittle. Barrow says tight ends who can block a 270-pound defensive end on one play and grab a 50-yarder on touchdown on the next are like comets. They appear rarely. 49ers happened to snag one in 2017 when they found Kittle. Since then, they've concentrated, on the blocking aspect, drafting Charlie Warner in the 6th round, Cam Latu, Braden Willis in the 7th. Perfect fit. He lists Tyler Warren from Penn State. That's not exactly a shock. I think that there would be a riot if the 49ers used the 11th overall pick on a tight end in April 11.
Yeah, the team that has the best tight end in the league drafts a tight end in the 1st round. Yeah, that doesn't really make sense. I get that this would create massive versatility for the 49ers. I don't see how they can justify a top 11 pick on tight end. I will say this is another position. All right, clearly you guys keep trying. You've drafted, 3rd rounders, 4th rounders, trying to address this tight end backup. Go spend a little bit of money in free agency. Finding a veteran tight end who's not great, but you know what you're getting is not that expensive. You can find somebody for $3-4 million a year that you can pencil in and is actually capable of being a reliable second tight end.
Whatever they're using to evaluate the tight end, like, they got to change it, because they've been just really bad.
I know what they're using to evaluate. They're using George Kittle. They're using a unicorn to try to find that unicorn again. It is dumb. What they're doing is they're saying, hey, here's a guy that's really developed as a blocker. He's a great blocker, and he has athleticism, so we might be able to develop him in the passing game. That's what they're doing, because that's what George Kittle was. Hey, this guy's a crazy good blocker. He played for a team that doesn't pass at all to the tight ends, so we don't know what he truly is as a receiver, but he's off the charts in terms of athleticism. So we're going to go ahead and draft this great blocker who might be able to develop as a pass catcher. Just stop. You got a unicorn. George Kittle is one of one. You're not finding a second one.
I would love for them to add that kind of weapon, but not at the expense of the 11th overall pick. Like, there's just much bigger needs. Like, there just is. Sometimes you can't go for the shiny toy. So please, I know Mayoko mocked Tyler Warren to the Niners at number 11 for one of his drafts, which is always scary, because I believe that Matt Mayoko is very plugged into the team and often puts the message out there that the team wants out there. So no, please do not go tight end in round 1. If you want a tight end.
Sorry, I was going to say, I think they've made a mistake. Like I said, they're looking for the guys that are already developed as a blocker, and then they'll develop them as a pass catcher. No. You have George Kittle already. He is maybe the best blocking tight end there's ever been. Go find a guy that is a great receiver and try to teach him to be passable as a blocker. I think it's a lot easier, not that it's simple, but for the tight end, it is. A lot of times your tight end's chipping or they're run blocking. It's not very often that you need your second tight end staying in to do pass blocking, right? If you're running 2 tight ends, you're not going to have the second tight end stay in and pass block. That's very rare. So go find the guy that's a good pass catcher and try to get him passable as a blocker.
Right. It's like that movie Armageddon, right? Instead of taking drillers and try to train them how to be astronauts, take astronauts and train them how to be drillers. It'd be a lot easier. And I agree with you. Let Kittle teach the dude how to block. Like, they'll figure it out. If you've got the right mentality, I feel like you can learn how to become a good blocker in the NFL. But that is what Barrows had to say about tight end. Moving to offensive tackle, Matt writes, the 49ers are looking for tackles with good feet. A tackle in the 49ers system must be quick and coordinated enough to move laterally while still being engaged with the defensive lineman. The Niners have used just one first-round pick on a tackle in the Shanahan era, of course, Mike McGlinchey in 2018. So I agree with that assessment completely. You have to be able to move if you're going to be a tackle in Kyle Shanahan's system. Obviously, Trent Williams is another unicorn, as you mentioned. The perfect fit that Barrows has is Chase Lunt from UConn, actually, in the 4th round because of his lateral agility. I agree, and I agree that they need a tackle because Trent ain't going to play forever. And one thing we know about Trent, he ain't going to play a full season because it's been a decade since he's done it.
Yeah, this one goes the opposite way. If they wait until the 4th round to take the first offensive tackle, I will be upset. They need to take an offensive tackle somewhere in the top 2 rounds, in my opinion. I don't think it necessarily has to be first round, but I do think that they need a top 2 rounds offensive tackle. Find somebody that you think has a good chance of being a starter in year 1. Not that they're necessary. If you take him first round, he has to be a starter year 1. But
Yes.
if you go second round, maybe he's not quite starter year 1 with already having McKivitz, who's not good, but not completely terrible either. It's just, I want to see them address that position more than any other position. So that's a position that if they wait on it in the draft, I will be upset unless they did something in free agency, but I don't anticipate that.
And no more of this. Well, they drafted him with an eye on him contributing in 2026 more than 2025. Yeah. No, like that's what you say when the guy sucks. I feel like that's like the cover that 49ers apologists use when the guy is not good. Other teams draft guys and they play and contribute in a major way right away. We can do the same thing. You don't always have to draft from 2 years, from now. And by the way, the 2023 draft class is not looking too good. So anytime those dudes want to actually contribute would be nice. So draft guys, let the best players play, and don't just think that, we can redshirt every guy, essentially. That's not the way the NFL works.
Yeah, it's that's a cover because what the Niners do like to do is they like to draft people that have high athleticism and then hope to develop them. And while that works some of the times, and usually when it works, it's a home run type of work. No, especially if the guy, like, I can understand that if the guy came from like a smaller school where maybe the coaching isn't quite up to snuff. But like if somebody played in the Big Ten and the SEC and they're still not developed technique wise, guess what? They don't give a shit to develop the technique because they had the ability to develop it because they had top coaches coaching them. Like, I don't care. It's like and we're going to get to it, but the guy that he suggests as a pass rusher, I read his draft profile. It talks about, like I said, we'll get into it more, but it talks about how he still needs to work on his technique a little bit. You literally went to the best school there is in developing the technique as a pass rusher. No, thank you.
I hate to say it. I think you're right. I'm not even going to say you're not wrong. I'm going to fully say you are right when it comes to that. Well, I don't know if it's going to change, but we will see. Guard, Matt Barrow says, the Niners take college offensive tackles, the longest, most athletic players on the college offensive line, and turn them into guards. That's what they did with Burford, Nick Zakelj, Dominic Pooney. At one point, they had designs on moving Colton McKivitz and Jalen Moore to guard too, but their needed tackle was too great to allow them to make the switch. Barrow suggests Joshua Gray out of Oregon State in round 4. He's actually already made the transition from tackle to guard, so that could be an eye on them. I don't have guard as big a need as tackle because I think tackle, like, you would like to improve over Colton McKivitz, and Trent Williams is going to miss time and retire soon, whereas guard, you've already got Pooney. So that's one spot you don't have to worry about. Just get somebody that's at least league average at guard. That's all I want out of this draft. Just get somebody that's league average at guard, somebody that can come in and play right away and be league average. Because, by the way, the whole advantage to nailing your picks in the draft is that you get 4 years or 3 years of cost-controlled play. Well, if you're sitting the guy for a year to quote-unquote develop him, you're missing out on one of the biggest positives of hitting on the draft pick in the first place. So get somebody that can come in. Even if they don't have the highest ceiling, that's okay. But give me a high floor guy at left guard next to Trent, and I'll be happy.
Yeah, this is actually, when I looked at guards in the draft about a month ago, this was the guy that stood out because of the history of being an offensive tackle. And he is somebody that according to the reports I read, has very, very quick lateral speed, which is a requirement in the outside zone blocking scheme. So I would be very happy to get him in the 4th round. That's one of the things. Like, he doesn't mention like where did he get his potential round projection on the players that he does mention. Because from what I've seen, Gray is considered likely 3rd round, potentially even 2nd round, because he's somebody that will likely improve his stock with the NFL Combine because he is so athletic. So I some of these that I looked at him and I'm like, how does he have him there? Like, he's clearly going to go well before that.
That is a good question. I just went back and looked, and I didn't see anything. He
He doesn't mention.
say.
Yeah.
Maybe he talked to like Dane Brugler. I have no idea, but he doesn't say. So we're speculating there. We don't really know. Okay. Oh, shoot. I just clicked it away like an idiot. Okay. Here we go. Let's go back to center. I'm in peak form right now. It says the 49ers obviously would love a 6'4", 320-pound center with 34-inch arms capable of making blocks 25 yards downfield. But this is the one position on the offensive line at which they're willing to take a shorter, stubbier prospect. Jake Brendel's arms, for instance, are 31 and 5/8 inches, which would be too short for the 49ers at guard and tackle. The perfect fit is Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State. He predicts him to go in the 2nd round. Somebody's name that you heard every single day of the Senior Bowl. He was, everybody's standout guard. I don't think the 49ers are going to go center in the draft. I think that Kyle values the position too much. You were talking about trust, Levin. He does not trust a rookie to have to make the protection calls along the offensive line, and that's what the 49ers center has to do. So even if they were to take a center, he's not playing year 1 for sure. So I think this is the least likely position to be addressed in the draft.
Well, I mean, the guy played guard in college, so it is possible that they draft him to play guard and they think that he's capable of sliding into center if they get in a bind.
Mm-hmm.
I do think of all the positions in free agency, the position most likely that they throw considerable money at is center because it is so important, because it is such a dumpster fire on what they have on the roster, that I do think that I would be surprised if they're not in on Drew Dahlman. If they don't, like, that's the guy that when I saw the salary cap go up a little bit and I was talking about how they might just say, look, check in with us before you agree to anybody else. Mm-hmm. That's the guy that I think they have a number in mind at this point, I'm sure, because they've done their research. I would reset the market with Dahlman.
Hey, you got an extra 30 mil. Maybe you do. Kenny says there's talk of Zabel going in the 1st round already. Hyman on Twitch, shout out to the Twitch fam, says Kyle would never start a rookie center, sign Drew Dahlman. Dahlman's a very popular man around these parts. And Andre Garibay, YouTube channel member, thank you, Andre, and all our YouTube channel members. Andre says that's a day 3 pick. Kyle don't play rookie centers. We agree on that. I would love just some improvement, please. Jake Brendel should not be the starter for this team. He could be on the roster. Okay, fine. He can't start. He was so bad. When you're able,
I don't think he can be on the roster because of what Barrow says there.
Because of the short arms?
He's not capable of playing guard. He's not capable. So, to me, if you have a backup center on roster, they need to have the versatility of being able to play guard. You need your backup guards capable of, you need backup guards and at least one of them capable of being a backup center. You don't need a backup center only, right? This is not Madden where you have somebody definitely penciled in as the backup center and that's all they do. No, you need a guard that's capable of sliding over there if something happens to the starter. You do not need a center specific backup.
That's a good point. I didn't think of that, but you're right. The more versatility you have with your backups, it's part of the reason they like Spencer Burford so much because they can move him around to different places. That's a really good point. All right, fine. Sorry, Jake Brendel. I just cut you. That's it. Levin talked me into it, so blame him. Okay, let's keep it going here. Next up is defensive end. Barrow says the archetype for this position is Nick Bosa. Yeah, no crap. The 49ers had initial success pairing him with a speed rusher, but more recent iterations haven't panned out as well for the 49ers. They seem more inclined to find a bigger 3-down bookend who can take over for Leonard Floyd when his contract expires next year. The perfect fit, and I apologize, I'm not sure how to say this last name, is JT Tuimoloau. I'm sorry, from Ohio State. That's my bad for not knowing the name. I apologize to JT for that. It says the draft's first 3 rounds will be teaming with edge rushers, and the Niners could use the number 11 pick on the position if they want to wait until the second round. This player has the size and length they like, 6'5", 267, and was ultra productive last season with 12.5 sacks and 22 tackles for loss. He also learned from Nick Bosa's mentor, Ohio State defensive line coach Larry Johnson, which would seem to make for an easy transition. Your thoughts?
I wouldn't be upset if they get him in the second round.
Right.
But like I said, I did go read this guy's draft profile on a couple other websites, and they all mentioned that he's not quite as developed as you would want with his hands. It's like, as they mentioned, he literally learned from Bosa's mentor, which is the best defensive line coach in college football. Like the amount of defensive linemen that Ohio State turns out, they are defensive linemen if you want to use the popular way of putting things like that. If you haven't developed that aspect of your game, to me, I got to downgrade you slightly. So he's not at the top of my list. I do have somebody, and he went to Purdue, but that's not why. He didn't. This last year, he was at Texas A&M. He was a transfer, but he is considered like a second-round guy. He is a Eric Armstead type, and I kind of like that for this year. He's 6'4" and 280 pounds. He's somebody that is capable of going inside, and they say he's a really good pass rusher on the outside and inside. He had 10 sacks for Purdue 2 years ago.
Who is he?
Nick Scourton. So he is somebody I like it because what you have is somebody that's considered like a really, really good pass rusher on the inside and a good enough pass rusher on the outside. The reason I like that is because he's big. He's considered really, really good against the run on the outside. Okay, play him early downs on the outside. And on pass rushing downs, you shift him inside and you bring in Floyd to be the pass rusher on the outside. I like having that, have somebody that is really, really good against the run on the outside. He's big, he's physical, and then he can slide inside, and he has history of doing it. He has experience doing it, and he'll be a really good interior pass rusher that then you have Floyd coming in to take that edge.
We know setting the edge was a huge issue for the 49ers. It has been for a couple of years. It's part of the reason why their run defense has been so bad lately. Kenny on YouTube says that your guy, Scourton, doesn't look super comfortable with his hand in the dirt. He was mostly stand up for Purdue. They had him more hand in the dirt at A&M, but it wasn't a great year. So what do you think of that?
I think that, so he was like the prize of transfers. He was one of the top transfers that past year. Like I said, he had 10 sacks for Purdue 2 years ago. He still had 5 sacks in the SEC, playing both inside and outside. Like the pass rush amount that he gets from the interior showed up even in the SEC. I mean, you can read that in multiple scouting reports. Obviously, he's one of the people that I'm most interested in this draft because of the Purdue history. But he is somebody that wins inside as a pass rusher, and he has very good first step for somebody that is 280 pounds.
San Mateo says he had a stress fracture all year too. So yeah, or I'm sorry. It says, let me just read the comment here instead of trying to summarize. Texas A&M screwed over Scourton. Turner had a stress fracture all year, and Shamar Stewart, the anti-Ole Miss, who maximized all their defensive linemen. So reviews, let's just say, are split, but that's somebody that you like. At defensive tackle, Barrows writes, the Niners want defensive tackles who explode off the snap. It's what they like most about DJ Jones. It's why they signed Javon Hargrave. Chris Kasarik wants a player who can penetrate and disrupt the opponent's backfield. Honestly, I don't even think you need that. This is maybe where I disagree most with what the 49ers like to do. You don't need that. That's a nice to have at defensive tackle. All you got to have, the bare minimum, just a guy that doesn't move. A guy that can hold the point of attack and hold the line of scrimmage so that when the pass rushers, which hopefully you acquire another good one, force the quarterback to step up, there's a guy, bam, right there. I don't need him to get 15 sacks for defensive tackle. Just hold the damn line.
I will say I do like Walter Nolan. I have no understanding of why /second round is there. Barrows has him listed as first/second round. He is the 9th overall prospect on ESPN. He was the number 1 overall prospect in his recruiting class. So he's somebody that was at the very top of recruiting classes, produced and did well in college, and now is coming out of the draft where most people have him as a top 10 prospect, at the very least, like top 20. There's no chance he goes to the second round unless he does something stupid in the lead up to the draft. So this is somebody that is an option at the 11th overall pick, and that's if he's even there at the 11th pick. But I do like him. He is somebody that has, there's a reason why he was the number one prospect in coming out of high school. He has traits that is extremely rare at defensive tackle.
Absolutely. I don't think anybody would be upset if the Niners took him in the first round. He's another guy you heard at the Senior Bowl. A lot of hype around Walter Nolan. At linebacker, Barrow says, what do the Niners want at a linebacker? Someone with a background as a defensive back. Fred Warner essentially lined up as a nickelback for BYU. DFF played safety at Arizona. Jalen Graham was a hybrid linebacker safety at Purdue. And Dre Greenlaw was a cornerback in high school. Again, I want a guy who's good at the main thing he's going to be asked to do. I don't need a linebacker that has to have some experience as a defensive back. Like, that's a nice to have, not a gotta have for me. The perfect fit they project is Jeffrey Bassa or Bassa. I'm not sure how you say it, from Oregon in the 4th round. I don't know if that I want a defense with Bassa and Bosa on it at the same time, just from a selfish standpoint, but that's what he says.
I don't honestly care about linebacker other than give me speed. To me, speed is it's something that makes up for lack of ability. Give me a guy that has speed at linebacker. I don't care a whole heck of a lot about size, so I do agree with the 49ers there. They do seem to prioritize both those things. And then obviously vision. But that can be learned. Drake Greenlaw, I used to harp on him. I was shocked when he emerged because what I saw in his first 2 years was somebody that couldn't recognize jack crap when it came to the run game. He constantly went to the wrong lane.
Yep.
But his speed still made him effective, right? So give me the guy that is got speed and has the ability to recognize things. Which I do think that's one of the things you get. What does a safety do a lot, right? That's all they do is sit and evaluate and try to recognize the play before it's too late. So that's why I think the Niners do prefer that mold. I do think of all the positions, that is the one that Barrows hit the nail on the head the most.
Before we continue on with the draft positions, I just want to take a look at something because I didn't think of this before when you mentioned the salary cap going up. I mentioned Deebo, and I meant to do this then, and I apologize. Just checking the odds for Deebo's next team, which, look, if somebody's going to trade for him, obviously, they're going to have to take on that contract, and he may want a new contract. So the salary cap going up obviously affects all of this. But according to BetUS, Deebo's next team is the Washington Commanders at plus 300, then the Chargers at plus 400, then the Carolina Panthers, surprising, at plus 500, and Denver at plus 600. Do you think Adam Peters would be interested in Deebo Samuel?
If Peters was a Samuel guy, that could have negative odds. You know what I mean? It could be minus 100. Because if Deebo was somebody that Peters was big on, then that's happening. Because they're going to offer more than anybody else. They have the cap room.
Fair.
They have the ability. I don't know that. The Niners know that, obviously, and Peters knows that. If it's true that Peters was a big Deebo guy, then he's going to be with the Commanders. If it's not true, maybe Peters was a guy that was anti-Deebo, doesn't like wide receivers who can't separate, then there's no chance. That's why it's one of these things it's too personal. Deebo is, I think, unique in the wide receiver trade market because he is somebody that can't get open on his own. How do you value him? It is 100%. I think he is somebody that GMs either say, that is a guy that if we have a chance, we need to try to get him. Or they say, I have zero interest in that guy being on our roster.
Which is why, to me, I look at Denver, especially at plus 600. Sean Payton is a guy that loves to work in the short passing game. He's a guy that can scheme Deebo open. I think he would look at Deebo Samuel and say, I'll get this guy the touches that he needs to be able to do what he does best and put him in a position to be successful. They were always my top choice. I will take them at plus 600. If you want to take any of these teams, do it with BetUS. You can receive 150% on your first deposit and 125% on your second and third deposit up to $2,000 with code YouTube150. I'm just saying that extra $30 million in cap space may push the Deebo over the line now. We'll see how the 49ers choose to handle that. but I did mean to mention that earlier. I apologize. It didn't squeeze it in, so we got it in there. Okay, let's get back to the Matt Barrows draft profiles thing. Next up, cornerback. Barrows says the Niners have been most successful when they've drafted cornerbacks known for their feistiness. DJ Reed, Diamador Lenore, and Renardo Green don't have prototypical size, but make up for their lack of length with toughness. The Niners felt all three had the requisite grit to play inside at nickel as well as outside in a traditional role.
This is the position that is the 49ers changed what they liked based on feedback and what they found. When the Niners came, it was 100% clear because everybody they took fit the mold that they wanted somebody that was big, and could do press. Akello Weatherspoon was their mold. That's no longer their mold. They like guys that are going to go in there and try to piss people off. They want the guy that's going to go in there and be like Lenore, where he's trying to piss you off by giving you like little hits slightly late and things like that. They want the feistiness 100%.
And they want guys that are physical in the run game as well. That the Niners target corners on offense. They want to make your corners have to tackle the running back. And on defense, they want the Niners corners to be able to tackle the running back themselves. You saw it with Mooney Ward, Jimmy Ward, Diamador Lenore, obviously. So they do like that feistiness. And the person he projects is Kobe Bryant out of Kansas in round 6. I just decided, because one of the cool things about this article is there's like highlights of everybody that he suggests, or almost everybody, embedded right in the article. So I was like, let me watch some of these Kobe Bryant highlights. He is feisty, man, and physical and willing to throw his body around. I was impressed by what I saw when I watched him.
Yeah, it's I mean, he does fit the mold. I like I said, I can't remember which content it was. I want to say it was either Steph Sanchez or it was Croc that mentioned Kobe Bryant. I remember seeing highlights and somebody putting him out there saying, this is a guy that is the exact type of corner that the 49ers would look for. So it wouldn't shock me to see him. I don't think he lasts till the 6th round. Once again, I think that is off. Like I said, I don't know where Barrows got his projections from because they are off from what the consensus is.
Yeah, so I'm not sure either. And then lastly, at safety, Barrows just says they value intelligence over foot speed, which I think is true when you look at Hufanga and Malik Mustafa. It's clear that foot speed is not as big a concern to them. They want physical guys. They want guys that can tackle. I would agree with that. Mayoko did say that they would be comfortable going into the season with Jair Brown and Malik Mustafa as their starting safeties. I don't think they're going to prioritize safety at all this offseason.
I don't think so either. There are more pressing issues. I think that there's also the ability to kind of change things where you only have one safety on the field. You know what I mean? If they get depth elsewhere, it's possible that on like obvious passing downs that they drop one safety into a very deep center, kind of like a center field type of role, and they instead either have another corner on the field, or they kind of go a hybrid where they put another linebacker on there that one might blitz, or they might just kind of all drop into a zone. I would like to see more creativity there, and I think we're going to see it on the defense. So I don't think that it's as pressing of an issue.
Completely agree. And maybe with that extra $30 million, they decide to bring Talanoa Hufanga back next year. We'll wait and see that as well. That's going to do it for this edition of the show. Levin, thank you as always. Thank you to BetUS for sponsoring this video. Once again, if you would like to sign up for BetUS, use promo code YouTube150. Back to work studying draft prospects, Levin.
Studying something, but not football related.
Thanks again, everybody, for watching. Give us a like, give us a follow, or subscribe, whatever you want to call it. We'll be back tomorrow with plenty more. Have a good one.